This is WFYI News Now. It's September 24th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, Indiana has one of the worst rates in the Midwest for affordable and available rental homes. We'll find out what the state's candidates for governor say they would do about the problem. Jasper County's sheriff pushes back against allegations that his deputies caused a man to die. And Indy residents now have a universal database to check lead hazards where they live.
This is an opportunity for a family to be empowered to decide or to determine the safety of their home themselves.
Those stories are coming up. But first, homeless people living in their cars will have a designated parking lot in Indianapolis to stay overnight starting next month. As WFYI's Ben Thorpe reports, members of Safe Park Indy say they are starting the program in response to a lack of shelter space across the city.
Across Indianapolis, there are over 300 people estimated to be living in unsheltered homelessness, which can mean sleeping outside or in their car. Elizabeth Friedland is the founder and executive director of Safe Park Indy. She says existing shelters aren't meeting the community's needs.
And I kept reading about this safe parking model, and I thought, well, this is genius. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of infrastructure. It was something that we could do immediately and try to provide some security and safety to folks who are having a really rough time.
At the park, visitors will park safely and have access to restrooms and a shower. The location of the park is kept private until a security check can be done on applicants. According to Friedland, the park already has a wait list 50 people long. I'm Ben Thorpe.
Indiana has a deficit of nearly 140,000 affordable and available rental homes, one of the worst rates in the Midwest. The state's candidates for governor were asked how to address that problem by the Indiana University Public Policy Institute. Democrat Jennifer McCormick says the state must ensure it's incentivizing actual affordable housing. And, she notes, Indiana has some of the worst renter protections in the country.
What can we do from the state lens to work with our local leaders to make sure our renters are protected?
Republican Mike Braun says he would ensure state regulations aren't unnecessarily adding to housing costs. But he says government alone can't solve the problem.
Businesses who benefit from the workforce are going to have to be part of the equation.
Libertarian Donald Rainwater says the state can't address affordable housing without reducing property tax bills.
Real estate investors are not going to pay rising property taxes without passing that cost on to their renter.
All three candidates have released plans aimed at addressing property tax spikes. The sheriff in Jasper County is pushing back against allegations his deputies overreacted to a medical emergency and caused a man to die. As WFIU's George Hale reports, that man's family is accusing deputies of using excessive force in the incident earlier this month.
Sheriff Pat Williamson is accusing an attorney representing the family of 26-year-old Riker Earl of spreading, quote, gross falsehoods. Williamson says his deputies responded to a medical emergency near Demote, Indiana on September 8th and opted to restrain Earl as he resisted medical personnel. He says deputies placed Earl in handcuffs after he failed to respond to pleas to remain calm. The sheriff says Earl became unresponsive and died 2 days later in the hospital. In interviews with local media in recent weeks, relatives accused the deputies of overreacting. Earl's aunt, Miracle Gaulinski, told WGN-TV in Chicago that Riker was begging for his life during the ordeal. Attorney Ben Crump is representing the family and says in a statement that Earl's death, quote, never should have happened. His family called for medical help, but instead they watched in horror as law enforcement escalated the situation and used excessive force. Crump is calling on the sheriff to release body cam footage of the incident. Sheriff Williamson says he reviewed the footage and insists it clears the deputies of several accusations. But he says the department won't release the footage until the Indiana State Police have completed an independent investigation. State police say they're actively investigating the incident and will have no additional information to share publicly beyond what's already been released. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm George Hale.
And for our final story today, Indianapolis residents now have a universal database to check lead hazards where they live. WFYI's Samantha Horton reports the new artificial intelligence program aims to empower people.
More than 60% of housing in Marion County was built before 1980. Those older homes have a higher chance of having lead paint that was used up until 1978, when it was federally banned from consumer use. A new database officially launched last week allows users to search an address to learn of any recorded lead hazards on the property in the past 10 years. Carla Johnson with the Marion County Health Department says while potential renters or buyers are supposed to be informed about lead on properties, that doesn't always happen. She says even when information is shared, it can be confusing.
This is an opportunity for a family to be empowered to decide or to determine the safety of their home themselves.
The database also has a chat feature that utilizes Google Translate and is capable of communicating in multiple languages. I'm Samantha Horton.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.